Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Stephen. My name is Stephen Izu. We are beginning a series called the God series. It's going to be a long one, but for now we are going to have two back-to-back episodes to talk about God. Yeah. So today we are talking about God, and with me here, like for the first time ever on this podcast, my guest is physically close to me, and I'm very excited. So, with me here to talk about that is Daniel Bassey. Daniel is a student just like myself, but there are levels. Daniel, you're welcome to Conversations with TV. Daniel, you're welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Stephen, for the opportunity to be on this podcast. It's an honor and it's a privilege to be heard by quite a lot of people. I mean, Conversations with Stephen is actually one very big solution to a lot of issues that people have as regards perspectives to things. I mean, it's one big thing that is about to be heard around the world, and because I mean, Stephen, this guy is doing a great job trying to bring light to people's minds. I mean, especially young folks, and I'm so honored to be on this podcast with him. Thank you very much.
You're highly welcome. Okay, let's get right into the action. Daniel, what is your worldview? How do you see the world?
Well, personally, I see the world as a space where people are given an opportunity to express what has been placed inside of them from divinity, right? I mean, regardless of whatever you believe as to the origin of humans, right? I believe that we did not just come and we did not just come into the world just to live and exist, right? So the world is that space where we all are given that opportunity to express what divinity placed in humanity.
Wow. So you believe firstly that we have come from someone, like we come from a source.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So do you believe that God exists?
Sure, I do believe that God exists. Very well.
And why are you convinced that God exists?
Well, much more than the popular opinion, because I know that the world is filled with perspectives, right? I mean, a lot of people have that notion that a lot of people draw inference from what they were told, right? A lot of people draw inference from what they think, right? So you discover that the world is existing with a lot of perspectives, either true or not true. But the ultimate perspective of a man, or the ultimate perspective a person can get, is an experience, right? So much more than the whole talk about the deity of God, I personally believe that there is a God because of one thing: experience.
Okay, yes, good.
I personally believe that there is a God because of one thing: experience, right? Now, I've encountered the God who, yes, everyone talks about. And growing up, I was to be part of those people who believe that there is a God because of people's perspective of things, right? And not just from the experiential perspective. Now, one major thing that brings truth to light, one thing that converts truth to reality, is when an information meets an experience, right? So I was told that there is a God, and then I encountered him, I experienced him. And then, I mean, it actually gave me more reasons to believe that there is a God. So my own perspective of God is not just from an informative standpoint, it's from an experiential standpoint. So I believe that there is a God because I have experienced him. Exactly.
That's really interesting. Do you mind sharing maybe one of those experiences you had that convinced you that God
Well,
exists?
there is the structure of the human species, the structure of man is such that even if we believe that there is no spirit, right, we cannot deny the fact that there is a soul, right? Because we see things from a point where it is not just physical, right? But then, even if a lot of people believe that it is not spiritual, right, it is not physical. Do you get? So, my experience of God was such as not physical, right?
I get the point.
Because it left an impact in my soul. So, I was told that God is a spirit, right? And then His workings are spiritual, right? And then, for me to encounter God, I was taught that I had to go through a person called His Son, which is also a spiritual being, which I don't see. All I have to do to access Him is just by believing in His sacrifice for me, right? And then, like, it's foolish to the logical mind, right? As I'm explaining it right now, it may seem very, very, very vague and foolish, but I dared to believe that there is a God, and then I could access Him through His Son. And guess what? And then coming to Him, I was taught some things which may seem like a ritual in Christianity, right? But then I followed these things, and guess what? I was told that if I should believe in Him, if I should believe that He did what He did for me, which is a sacrifice, His death for me, I would actually have His peace, I would actually have His life, I would actually be able to do things that He can do, right? And then guess what? I dared to believe, and trust me, since then, I had a lot of things happening in my life that I cannot explain how these things can come about from the standpoint of what my eyes can see. So from there, I understood that God is a person, He's a being that can be experienced, right? And of course, I did experience Him, right? Having His life, I was able to do things that the human mind cannot comprehend, right? I know you may find it very difficult to believe, but how can you explain growing water in a bottle? I mean, it is not a function of humanity and the human mind. I mean, it is very, very silly to talk about it. How can you explain growing the hands of a full-grown human being, commanding the hands of a person to grow out? I mean, how can you explain you walking up to a person who is filled with sickness and then this person is coming back to life? How can you explain raising a dead child? So, I mean, these things are the things that I experienced, that I know definitely that the God who I serve, who has given me this authority and these powers to do these things, I mean, He is one who exists, right? And so I believe that God is one who exists, not just because of what I was told, but because of what I was told and because of what I experienced, right? So that is it.
You are really convinced.
Yes, I'm extremely convinced.
Okay, let's talk about people. But before we talk about people, you've reiterated that you believe in God, and you just shared why you do so because of your personal experiences with Him. Because firstly you can't see Him.
Yeah.
So in the most part, these experiences are not physical experiences.
Yes.
So you are without doubt sure that God exists.
Sure.
And do you think He controls the universe?
Well, the affairs of the universe is meant to be controlled by the one who supposedly created the world, right? For example, you look at a company like Microsoft that produces devices, right? You look at the HP and all that. Now, you may be thinking that I own a HP laptop. HP doesn't control the laptop, right? But guess what happens? HP can release an update. Microsoft can release an update. And then you have to update your PC. The PC is yours, you get, but Microsoft still has access to what? The running of that PC, in the sense that it's you can decide. Now, one of the things I'm trying to lay a foundation to what I want to say now, and it is your option to either choose to update your PC or not, right? So the world in itself is meant to be controlled by God, but you discover that man, the human species that is all over the earth, who seems to be the one in charge of the earth, is not giving God the chance to do what he wants to do in the earth, right? So in the real sense, God, he ought to be the one controlling the affairs of the earth, but man is not giving him the chance to do that. That's why we have a lot of things that people are doing today just to, bring out taste from humanity, which in turn is what is harming humanity badly.
That's very interesting. Okay, do people, humans like me and you, although you've some minutes ago, you spoke about how, based on your personal experiences with God, you've seen some mysterious workings done through you, but you've seen things that made you believe that God exists.
Yes.
So now, do humans, people like me and you, do we have the ability to interfere in the course of the universe? Because from what you just said now, God is the person that created the universe, and we need to be constantly connected to him so that we will know what to do at per time.
Yes.
So that our software will be updated. Now, do we have, let's say, God, of course, God, we get the update on God.
Yeah.
For sure. But in the meantime now, before we get timely updates from God, do we have the ability to interfere in the course of the universe?
Well, the world is designed to function in a cause and effect mode. So, because it's just like in programming, there is an if-then statement, right? If it is this, then this, right? If it is this, then this. If it is not that thing, then this. So, for every action of man, there is also a consequence. My Bible tells me, I'm a Christian, and then my Bible tells me that Christ died for the sins of humankind. Why? Because man fell, right? So man has that ability to interfere in the course, right, of the world, right? Man has that ability to fast track a process or delay a process. So the power is with man. My Bible also tells me that the heavens of the heavens, it belongs to God, but the earth he has given to what? The sons of men. Much more than the earth belonging to the sons of man, right, which is still man. God has that ability to control, but the human activities, the things that man decides to do on the earth, right, is what will affect the earth, and it's actually what is going to determine what God himself will be able to do on the earth, right? So that is exactly what I believe and what I think.
So why is this possible? Why do we have the ability to interfere?
Because we are humans. And God is a spirit, right?
Sorry, I want to cut it short. What does it mean to be human? What humans?
Human is you and me. What does it mean to be human? What it means to be human is to be you and it's to be me. All right. So now the human species is one of the very, very complex creative work of God, right? So my Bible tells me in the book of Genesis how that God came together with the Godhead and he said he wants to create man in his image, right? And in his likeness. And then he said something, there was a designated responsibility and said, let them have dominion over what the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every creeping thing, right? And then in the next chapter, after God had created everything, he created man from the dust of the earth, right? Remember, he said, let us make man in our own image, right? And then in the next chapter, he said, man was formed from the dust of the earth. right? So you now discover that man is that complex species of being that has the ability to interact with divinity and with the physical world, right? Because we were made from God and from dust.
But we're placed on the earth.
We were placed on the earth. So if you now look at the very first appearance of man in the world, and the area where man appeared was in the garden, a garden east of Eden, right? And then we discovered that that was such a place that man was able to interfere with God. Man was able to interact with what? Divinity, right? And in that same garden, the Bible said that from the ground, God caused from the ground to grow two trees, right? The tree of the knowledge of good and of evil, and the tree of life. And then in that same garden, there were other trees that were for food, right? Now, you now discover that the tree of the knowledge of good and of evil wasn't just a physical tree, right? And the tree of the knowledge of life wasn't just a physical tree. Meanwhile, there were other physical trees there. And also, you hear that God is a spirit, right? But then, the first man was able to interact with God in that same place that is physical, right? So you discover that man had that ability, right, to interact with what? Divinity and with what? The rest of the world, right? The physical earth. So man is that complex species that has a dual function, both in the unseen and the seen realm. But our primary place of our primary location is not just the seen, the physical, right? Because we are existing in two forms, right? We are existing both in the spiritual and what in the physical. So when you say man is on the earth, what is the earth? Because the same man who is on the earth is one who is existing in the spirit, right? So man is that complex concept, that complex entity that houses interactions with divinity and what we can see. Exactly.
So it's possible to really interfere in the course of the universe. So how can we do this? You've spoken about God and God being supernatural and how God controls the universe by putting his hand in the affairs of man from time to time to show that he is the person that created the universe. And you've spoken about we humans being able to interfere in the course because of how we were made, and where we were placed initially. So how can we as humans, how can we interfere? And if we can, how do we interfere? How can we and how do we interfere?
Okay, the first man that was actually created had the ability to dispense wisdoms. And the Bible tells us that he was able to name the animals. And the name he gave to all the animals was exactly the same name that God actually wanted them to have. Right? So you discover that man had wisdom innate in him. He was born. Man is that species of being that he has high intelligence. So he could give names to what he did not create. Right? So that was actually one of the ways that we can actually interfere. By what? Wisdom. And how do we get this wisdom? Now, there's this philosopher, I can't really remember his name. Is that Socrates, or can't really remember that he talked about the mind of man having to the mind of man functioning in two dimensions, the innate dimension and the adventitious dimension, right? Talking about the innate, it talks about that part of man that has nothing to do with what you know, right? Now, how can we interfere with the cause of creation? How can we interfere with the cause of the earth? It's by bringing in virgin ideas, things that has no relationship with what anybody told you, right? Now, it's by bringing out those things. And how can you access those things? Remember, I said that man is that species of being that has the ability to interfere with what? The spiritual, and with what? The sin. Right. So your ability to tap into those frequencies, your ability to tap into those wisdoms existing in the innate man, which is supposedly spiritual, right? It's one of the ways to bring changes and effects a lot of things in the physical world, which is primarily called the earth, right? So you could actually do that. I mean, we can actually interfere. Look at what happened recently. How that we are talking about the weather. We are talking about depletion of climate change and all that. Now you can draw an inference from that. How is climate change possible? It is because of human activities, right? And then you are saying that everybody is now saying let's go green. Why? Because we burning carbon. Carbon emission is causing depletion of what? The ozone layer. That is exactly one of the ways that man has the ability. And now you begin to look at the new inventions in science, the advances in technology and everything. It's pointing to one thing. It's pointing to changes in the earth, such as affecting the cosmos, right? I mean, this is one of the powers that man has. So we can effect changes on the earth that can affect distances that are millions of feet away from the sea level. That is one of the powers that man has. So how can we effect changes in the course of the earth? Is by bringing out ideas from the innate mind or developing ideas that already exist. That is what is called the adventitious.
How can we do that? How can we tap into that realm of whereby we can bring ideas to fruition in the physical?
One of those major ways, a lot of people think that ideas are things that you may just be, it may just be something so complex and very, very spectacular for you to get an idea. But ideas are one of the simplest things. That's why you listening to me right now, even you can agree with me that most of the times when you get into the bathroom to turn on the shower, immediately you turn on the shower, and then you're having your bath. Ideas just you start having some kind of things that you begin to wonder how did I think about is it that there is a spirit in my bathroom or something? No. That's to tell you how it is easy for you to tap into frequencies. I mean, it's easy for you to get into things that are not visible to the eyes, right? But much more than that. One of the ways also is by intentionally engaging the mind, intentionally engaging the unseen you, right? Because man exists in two forms, the spiritual and the physical, right? It is the spiritual and the physical that fuses together to produce the mental, the mind, the soul, right? The Bible tells us that God breathed into man the breath of life, and he became what? A living soul. He didn't say a living man, a living soul. So you can bring ideas from the supernatural side, and it translates. It's being decoded in your soul, and your physical man can bring these things to manifestation. Exactly. So you want to get ideas, you can go deep in meditation.
Intentionally.
That's why you hear, you should be surprised looking at many of these countries where invention seems very easy. How that these guys go deep in days. They go into meditation for days, and they come up with ideas that disrupt the order of the earth. You start thinking about the cars, the aeroplanes, and all that. These are the ways that these ideas are born. Right. So that's it basically.
Wow. So it's good that we encourage the listeners to spend quality time, not just before you sleep, because some people, the only time they have to think is if you're in the bedroom or before they want to sleep.
In the toilet.
So it's good to take out quality time for meditation and thinking.
Yes. Very much good to do that.
Okay. We've actually spoken about a lot today. A lot. And of course, we are going to continue in subsequent episodes. But based on what we spoke about today, Daniel, and taking cognizance of what goes on in the earth at this time, what do you think should be the basis of life for young people all over the world?
Well, for me, I strongly believe that everybody has the right to life. Everybody has the right to choice. Like my economics teacher in secondary school days always tell me, every man is a monopoly of choices. But we discovered in recent times that we have a world that is largely influenced by the adventitious mind. That is what people see, what people hear. And then you see your friend who is doing good, he has a car, and you want to form the basis of life and success to having a car and a house. But you forget that the Creator God gave everyone a purpose, right? The Creator God gave everyone an assignment. The Creator God gave everyone something specific and unique for the cause of the earth, right? And then you forget that purpose, and then you begin to chase what money can buy, right? The truth is, I'm going to leave you with a question, and that is, if there was no money, if there was nothing like money in the world existing in the course of the universe, what would you be doing with your life? That is where life begins from. So, how should you model your life? Model your life as though the things that you are chasing today, the money and all those things you're chasing today, model your life in such a way that those things don't exist. Think about it. I'm not saying you shouldn't work. I'm not saying you should go lazy. I'm not saying you should go sleep on your bed and start thinking. No. Think about it. What would I be doing if there was no money? Right? And then start thinking of something from that standpoint. And it's actually going to affect the course of what you have to supply to the earth. That is exactly my advice on how people should live in times like this, especially in the coming year, 2021.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Any final words or admonition?
Well, I want to say that everyone listening to me right now should, of course, whatever you believe in, if you believe in God, if you believe in the devil, if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in the devil, but make sure that you are not in mental slavery. Make sure that you are not following something because someone told you. Make sure that that thing that you want to believe, of course, I believe that the majority of you, I mean, the people listening to this podcast are people who are Christians. Make sure that you know God for yourself and don't just leverage on, what people say and, what you hear in church and all that, because trust me, the church is filled with doctrines, but God is not a doctrine, right? God is not a set of do's and don'ts. God is not a set of protocols, right? So you have to learn God for yourself. You have to experience God for yourself. Don't walk in mental slavery and call it Christianity, right? That is exactly my final words. And trust me, God is sweet, God is big, God is everything that you can actually think of. That's it basically. So,
wow. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, wow. I'm very, very grateful. We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you, Daniel, once again.
Thank you very much.
To those that are listening, and to those who have listened till this point, I am very grateful that you have decided to listen to this podcast and this episode till this point. I am grateful to God for the opportunity and the privilege and the grace He has given me to put this together. If you have a question, a feedback, or a topic you feel we should talk about on here, it should be something that relates to the life of young people. So just send me an email. Send an email to cwstephen20@gmail.com. cwstephen20@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with another episode in this series, but with another guest, and that is going to be also wonderful. Thank you so much once again. Bye bye and see you next time.